The following is a production of Sharkflight Media.
From mechs to mages or agents to Argonauts, this is the world of Chris Kennedy Publishing. This is the CKP Future Books Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to this month's edition of Future Books. We are talking about the books that are being released in July of this year. Everybody is back from LibertyCon, which was a hugely successful convention in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Unfortunately, our publisher came down with a little bit of the convention blues, and he was not able to join us this month. So we have been lucky enough to have Mark Stallings, one of the authors of the CKP universe and one of the people behind the CKP international titles, where we translate the series that we do here in the U.S. to other countries. And he's going to take Chris's place this month. Welcome, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you today?
I can't complain very much at all. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and sitting in for Chris this month.
Yeah, it sucks that, he's down with the bug. But I was happy to do it. I mean, I look forward to talking with you about what's happening at CKP.
Well, we certainly appreciate having you here. We'll jump right in this month. This month is a big month. Not only do we have some CKP titles, but we also have some new Mythology Press titles, which is the fantasy arm of Chris Kennedy Publishing. Rob Howell is our featured guest this month, and he goes in detail with what's going to be out in the near future with new mythology. And then he looked and gave us the opportunity to look at what new mythology is going to be doing in the coming year. So we will talk about those as we talk about the month. But we're going to start the month off on July 7th with Harvest, which is the new Abner Fortis novel from Paul Piatt. Can you tell us anything about it, Mark?
So Paul's Abner Fortis series is fantastic. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I got almost military PTSD reading the first book, Cherry Drop. It's just so accurate of a new person joining a unit and everything that they're going through, and then circumstances beyond Abner Fortis's control, an accident during landing, and he's now in charge. And so it's just a fantastic series. I mean, Paul does a great job. His website and author page is under P.A. Piatt, Papa Alpha Piatt. And Paul does a great job just, working Abner through everything that's going on within, the political conflicts in the universe, and then, a mysterious alien race coming in. And so Harvest is the latest install. And so in this particular one, he introduces a new mysterious, a race that's never been seen before. And, the tagline of it is, what happens when the unstoppable force meets the immovable object? I mean, if you haven't had a chance to read these, they're like mind candy.
I agree 100%. I followed Paul since his first book, and Abner Fortis is a wonderful character. I've been twisting Paul's arm for a couple of years to start making Denley shirts to sell at conventions.
Oh, I did too, and he's doing it. I don't know.
That's great.
We got to see the prototype in the cantina.
So if you don't read the Paul Piatt books for any other reason, you need to read one, which will suck you in and make you buy the rest of them, just to understand what the term Denley means. It's a great science fiction term, much like Tonstoffel and several others that we've read over the years in various science fiction books. And then we move from science fiction over to fantasy. As I said earlier, New Mythology Press is having a couple of releases this month. And this particular release is from one of my favorite authors. I followed him for years before he was published, when he was on Bane's Bar, Chris Nuttall. And this book is A Hope in Hell. It's the third book in his Heirs to Cataclysm fantasy. This is a great fantasy novel. The magic has real rules. The stories are great. They're adventure novels. And it's really a coming-of-age story of the main character, who we meet in the first book as a student of magic. And things happen. He ends up being exiled from his country, and having to go it alone and basically teach himself the true meaning of magic and how the rules actually work, not what he was taught in school. This is one of my favorite series. I'm looking really forward to this. It's coming out July 11th. Have you heard anything about this, Mark?
So I've been exposed to the series. I read the first book. I also write, sword and sorcery fantasy. I was involved with Rob in the Eldros Legacy. So, I have a book that came out last year. And the thing that I really enjoy about Chris's magic structure, like you said, he has hard rules. I mean, and that's one of the things that from an author's perspective, you can bend the rules, you just can't break the rules. And he does a fantastic job of really setting up the world and his character and really turning that character into a protagonist that you're going to root for. I mean, almost the underdog. I mean, everybody loves the notion of, I'm going to go to a magic school and I'm going to learn something super cool.
The adventure aspects also, all of his characters. One thing that I've always appreciated about Chris is his characters are believable and characters that when you read them, you feel like you would want to know them and know more about them.
Relatable,
He does a great job in this.
Relatable, yeah. So one of the things that I hope, and I didn't get a chance to talk with Chris if he was at LibertyCon, but hopefully one of the upcoming cons, I'm hoping that he's going to do another trilogy in this world, because I'm really enjoying what I'm reading.
I hope so too. And I think Rob Howell elaborates on that a little bit further in the second half of the podcast. Then on July 14th, we have An Isolation of Purpose, which is the next novel from C.S. Ferguson. I am not as familiar with this. This is the Transhuman War. So maybe you know more about it than I do, Mark.
So unfortunately, this particular series, I mean, I know Chris really well, C.S. Ferguson. He's a fantastic guy. He's a game designer. He's brilliant. To his detriment, he's very humble. So he's one of those quiet guys you got to watch. But I understand the premise of the story. I'm really looking forward to it on the 14th. I'm a binge reader, so I'll like, that's why, guys like Paul Piatt or William Frisbee or John Sears that are writing these long, deep series I love, because I can just rip them up. But I'm looking forward to this one. Just, getting into the science fiction stuff. I just love it.
I agree. And I've read a couple of the Transhuman War books. They're really good. And I can't agree with you more about John Sears and Fred Hughes. I could read their stuff. They can't write fast enough for me.
Yeah, Fred's book just came out. And as of this morning, he broke the top 1,000 paid in store and Kindle.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm very happy for him, because his series is one of my favorites. On July the 21st, we have Privateers and Pandemonium, which is a offshoot of Salvage title, the Space Hyenas. This is one of the most ridiculously funny, well put together series that has been done in Salvage title, in my opinion, since it's been out. I absolutely love this. The humor is incredible, and you couldn't ask for two nicer people to be writing the books.
So if you spend any time with Nick Steverson and Melissa Olthoff, I mean, they embody their characters. I mean, they, just like the hilarity that's in the Salvage Treasure series here, I mean, when you spend any time with them, you can see where it comes from. I mean, these guys are awesome to be around. I mean, we have a weekly gather of the CKP authors that we call the Peacemaker Cantina. So we were around when kind of this thing was born. And I'm very excited. They, even though I'm a good friend of theirs, they haven't given me an early copy of this. So just like you, I have to wait until the 21st to get my claws into it. But I mean, their individual series in the Salvage universe are fantastic. And then here, this is just a culmination of their brilliance. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I've always been of the opinion it's much harder to write a humorous, good science fiction novel than just write straight science fiction. They are the epitome of this genre. They are. It's like watching a Monty Python movie or a really good episode of Ren and Stimpy.
You're talking about watching Nick and Melissa interact, right?
Absolutely. And Melissa takes no prisoners. Then on July 23rd, we have A Lake Most Deep, which is a new fantasy novel.
25th. It's on the 25th.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. 25th. And this is a new fantasy novel by Rob Howell, who is
So this is actually a re-release of Rob's series. And so he has a...
Oh, I thought this was the first book in the series. I'm sorry.
It is. So it's a re-release. And so they did some editing. They reskinned it with beautiful new covers. I got to see it at LibertyCon.
Cool.
And I mean, I've read this book, the original iteration of this book. So this is his fantasy private eye series. I don't know if you ever read the Glenn Cook kind of sleuth-like novels. I mean, Rob's a big Raymond Chandler fan and, that whole noir thing. So this is Rob baking that into a fantasy private eye style series. So
this
very
is
popular. Great. Yeah. I mean, and so this is Rob he just went through a huge move. I'm sure he'll tell you guys all about the crazy building that he bought. But now that his life is settling back down, he's jumping into this both feet so that he can start ripping out episodes in his fantasy sleuth series.
That's great. I was not aware of the fact that this was a re-release, but he and I have actually talked about this series because both he and I are huge fans of Robert Parker, and but I did not realize that this was a re-release. That's very exciting. And you spoke of the covers. The covers from CKP over the past year have become so good.
They have evolved definitely from the early days of CKP. We've been able to find artists that are just fantastic. And just the collaboration between the author and the artist has just been phenomenal.
It has. And, covers sell books. And in the past year, our covers have started telling a story in and of themselves. And that's exciting.
Yes, absolutely. And that dovetails right into this next book by Nick Plume. I mean, the covers on her series are fantastic. They
are. And her series is interesting because she comes at science fiction in a way that I have not been very familiar with. It's almost shamanistic. Some of it is almost shamanistic. And her telling of her story, usually when you read a story, you can relate it to another author or another book you've read. This particular series, I don't have anything that I can walk up to somebody and say, this science fiction book is very much like something that they're going to be familiar with. It is really good and really interesting.
And, we had an opportunity. We've worked with Nick on the CKPI side. She was doing German proofing for us, but she is a native German speaker. And so that her culture and where she grew up and gives a real interesting, different cultural flavor. So as she creates her futuristic worlds, it has I don't want to overuse this term, refreshing kind of difference in that, her slice of life has that different feel. So she can kind of paint with a different brush. And so it really makes for an interesting story.
Yeah, I think refreshing is a great word because it did not remind me of anything. It stood on its own. And it don't get me wrong, when I say shamanistic, that doesn't mean it's not good science fiction. It's not fantasy science fiction. It's just something you haven't seen before. Everyone should try that first book. It's an extremely good book. And you mentioned CKP International. You are integral to that project, and a lot of our listeners don't know anything about it. Can you give us a little overview or talk to us a little bit about what CKPI is?
So 2 years ago or so, three of us got together. Kevin Steverson, William Allen Webb, and I approached Chris to talk about translating books, to basically take books that he's been publishing in the English market into other markets, German, French, and Spanish specifically. And so we have published over 200 books through CKPI into
in
those
2 years?
In the last 2 years, yes. So we figured out how to do it, and then we're just running gangbusters. So CKPI is a very healthy arm of Chris Kennedy Publishing, and we've published over 200 books, and we're on target to hit 300 by the end of the year. So for your audience,
yep,
even if you don't publish through Chris Kennedy Publishing, you can have us take your books into foreign markets through Chris Kennedy Publishing International. So we work with several authors that are not published through CKP, and we handle their translations into other markets.
That is very interesting. I did not know that. So once you started translating these books, and since most of the books that CKP publishes tend to lead to series, has the international market picked up on it, and do they like this type of fiction?
Absolutely. So one of the things, the big departures from the way CKP operates, since the series are already done or are deep into it in the English market, we're able to do pre-orders safely in the other markets. So because we can do pre-orders in the German, French, Spanish markets, we've seen a huge uptick in people jumping in. Once they taste it, they want more. And so right now, like you said, we've got authors like Paul Piatt and John Sears, Bill Frisby. They're continually moving on their series. And so as they release, we get the manuscript, we get the translation done, proofed, formatted, and loaded into the next, whatever the market is, German or French.
So we've shown a lot of love to CKP. We've shown a lot of love to the CKPI. So let's give a little love to Mark. Do you have anything coming out this next year, or what are your plans?
So
as an author,
within CKP specifically, I'm working on Bureau 42. So within the Fortis universe, one of the authors, Jason Cordova, had asked, "Hey, do peacemakers have cold cases?" And then that spawned an anthology. So I have a story. My first published story through CKP, actually my first published story period, was with Set the Terms. So it's a first mission for a peacemaker, and that character that was in Set the Terms, my story Tangent Orange, is basically going to be making a reprisal in Bureau 42. So that's what I have working on there. I have a book series that's published by Shadow Alley Press. I write wuxia, which is Asian fantasy, think magic-powered martial arts, and I'm in the middle of book 2 right now, and I'm hoping to have it done so that I can sell it at Dragon Con. I'm going to knock on some wood here.
Yay.
Let's see. But it'll definitely be out and ready, and maybe in time for Christmas.
And if anybody wants to keep up with what you're doing and books that you have coming out other than the CKP website, is there any other social media that they can go to?
So I'm on Facebook, Mark Stallings. I'm on Instagram, strangely enough, as Mad Coffee Mark. And I have a website, markstallings.com.
Well, we really appreciate you sitting in for Chris this month. Did a great job. I will tell Chris that there's somebody that's gunning for his job.
Oh, no. I know what he does. I don't want that job.
Lord, no. I'm trying to figure out how he gets 28-hour days.
He works hard for his money. I mean,
he does. He never slows down. But we appreciate you filling in for him. Very happy for the success of CKPI. Look forward to Bureau 42, your short story there. And hopefully we'll be talking to you again soon.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure, Randall.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone, for hanging on for the second half of the podcast. This month, instead of interviewing an author like we generally do, we have the privilege of talking to Rob Howell. Rob Howell is editor-in-chief of New Mythology Press, which is an imprint of CKP. He is the driving force behind all of the fantasy books that come out from CKP. They all are released under the New Mythology label, and we last talked to him a little over a year ago, and we thought we would come back and talk about where New Mythology is going, what books are coming out, and what we see for the future of fantasy with CKP. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you getting me on again. You do great work with these podcasts, and we appreciate it.
Well, I certainly appreciate you saying that. Man, I tell you what, your whole world has changed since last time we talked.
It has. The last 4 months. I'm actually going to talk about this in my newsletter today. In the last 4 months, I have moved. I have become a grandfather. I have a whole bunch of other changes in my life. I drove over 20,000 miles in the last 4 months to make the move happen. And it's just been incredible. But the best part of it all is that all of these changes are for the better. We love the place we've moved to. We've moved to a small town in Kansas that really seems to suit us. We're going to be opening up, my wife has wanted to open up a quilt and weaving and yarn and sewing store for a long time, and we're going to do that. I will, of course, open up a bookstore, so there will be a brick and mortar place that you can buy Chris Kennedy, all of Chris Kennedy, a bunch of Chris Kennedy titles and new mythology titles, and probably some other publishers as well. Not to mention because we like books.
What is this brick and mortar you speak of?
I know. Brick and mortar in a town that's an hour away from Wichita that you'll probably never drive through, but really is a neat little town. It's got, when we were contemplating the building, which was too good of a deal for us to pass up, when we were contemplating it, we tried out the local bar and found that it had good beer and good food, and we tried the local breakfast place, and it had good food, and grocery store 1 block away, grocery store 2 blocks away. I had this funny moment a couple of weeks ago. I had a bunch of errands to run, and we bought in a trailer for us to do SDA stuff. And I took it over. I dropped the keys off to the car place, and they came over and picked it up to check the tires and whatnot. I dropped the keys off, went over to the city hall to pay our utility bill, then went to post office to finally file my change of address. Then I went to the county courthouse to get the tags for the new trailer, and then got coffee and breakfast for the wife. And man, that was a long half mile. All of that within a half mile.
Well, that's great, and there's something special about small town life and everybody knowing everybody and the relationships that you get in a smaller community.
Yeah, there's good and bad and everything, but we're settling in well, I think, and we really like the people we've met here so far, and we're excited to become a part of this community once we get a chance to finally unpack everything and actually open up the shop that we're hoping to open up in the fall. So life is in transition for me, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about things, because this will probably mean some great new things for new mythology, if only because all of the changes are actually, once they settle down, are going to put me in a much better setup, to be honest. And we really like we really like where we're at.
Absolutely. The podcast is getting its own studio. It's actually being built as we speak. So I can
awesome.
I can certainly commiserate with you. And change is both exciting and a lot of work.
Yeah, and one of the things building is so big that we may very well dedicate a room wholly to doing podcast and recording, because she's going to want to do some of that for her quilting, of course, and then I'll have my own stuff. And so it may be that upstairs we'll put a studio in ourselves, because we've got the space for it. This place is huge. We stumbled on a great find, and it is ridiculously big, but we're excited. Again, we're excited about what.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for you and for me too. There's something to be said for having a space where you can set stuff up and leave it set up, where you're not having to rebuild the universe every time you need to do something.
Yeah. One drawback right now is that while I do have my entire computer set up, like operational, the area where it's at, I've got to redo a little bit. Most notably, I got to pull everything out so I can put hard flooring in. I scoot around on a chair often, or in my little U area that I've got. And we've got beautiful thick carpet, but I think I'm going to pull some of it out so I can have a place to sit. And there's those mats that you get that you can put on chairs, and I hate those because I'm routinely catching a wheel off the edge. I just can't stand them. So
Well, this doesn't have anything to do with publishing, but I can tell you from my experience, because I feel exactly the same way you do. The best upgrade you can do for your main chair is Amazon sells the wheels that go on rollerblades for office chairs, and when you replace the wheels that come with your chair with these polyurethane wheels, not only are they completely silent, but they roll over anything.
Oh, well, maybe I'll check that out. Maybe I'll do that in store.
They're not very expensive. Let's talk a few minutes about the 3 books that you have coming out in the near future, the Firehall sagas. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, right now it's 3 books, but it's actually going to be somewhere between 10 and 11 in a sequence. I've got a couple of choices to make for the November release. I haven't made them yet. Got to sort of sit down and make that plan. And with the move, it's been hard to do some of the long-term planning just because of time. But the first 3 that are coming out are the first 3 Edward fantasy mysteries. One of my reviewers said it was Raymond Chandler in a Tolkien universe. If those references aren't necessarily the ones you want, Dave Butler actually said that he calls them a mix between Harry Bosch and Uhtred of Bevenberg. So that's not a bad compliment either.
No, I'll take all the Bosch I can get. So,
right, I'm a big fan of Bosch myself. And to be honest, Titus Welliver does a hell of a job playing him as an actor. But I digress, because that's what I do. But anyway, these are fantasy mysteries. A guy basically trying to find his place in the world, and all he finds is murder and mayhem, and sort of has to solve it all. Along the way, he quite a few enemies and some frenemies, and some good guys who are pretty bad, and some bad guys who are not so bad, and fun stuff along the way. I've had a lot of fun writing these, and they basically started because when I was writing when I was writing it, I thought I was going to write epic fantasy. And then it just happened I was rereading the Spencer series from Robert B. Parker. And if you're a fan of that series, then you can also say that these are novels in a medieval Tolkien Balkan area. So there you go. I
personally think that Robert Parker was the best author of vernacular American English ever. I think he was absolutely the epitome of the American mystery writer. I won't argue that. I have some. I have everything he's written, and I've been a huge fan of his ever since I stumbled onto one of them, 1980 or something like that. I stumbled onto one of his, and I've gotten every one when they've come out. It's a shame he died. Ace Atkins did some decent mystery, but you're talking about voice. Ace Atkins has a good mystery voice. He's a very good mystery writer. But he's not Robert Parker. Yeah, Robert Parker has a way about him that all of us can try to emulate, but it is really hard to do. My favorite of his series actually became Jesse Stone series. Oh, yes. And of course, I digress again. The movie. Oh, yes. The ones with the guy from Blue Bloods, Magnum P.I. Tom Selleck. He embodies that character. Yeah, it's really well done. And one of the things I love about that one is most movies today, most TV shows, tend to push the speed. And I generally speaking, tend to push the speed on my prose. I try to make fast-paced stuff. But there is something to be said about hiding as much tension as they do in those movies at a fairly slow pace. And yet you're never bored because they do it so well. It's almost like jazz. That's a reasonable way to phrase it. They have their tempo and they stay in their groove for the entire movies. But it was really funny. I read an article several years ago, and it talked about, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Tom Selleck actually bought the rights to do those, and he produces those himself because he was such a huge fan of Parker and that particular character. Yeah, I believe that's true. If it isn't exactly true, it's close to true. Like he might have had partners or some invitation. But generally speaking, I'm pretty sure that he is making those sort of on his own, and I am all for it. I think they're fantastic. And while we're on the subject, I will go ahead and throw this in. In my opinion, the heir to Robert Parker, as far as being able to write in a voice that's very similar is John Sanford. If anybody has not read him, his books, I think, hold a lot of their quality to maybe him being a fan of Robert Parker, because that voice is very close.
Well, I haven't actually read much of his, but I guess now I will.
So now let's go back to science fiction and fantasy, particularly fantasy. No, I could talk about this all day long. I'm having to pull myself away from it, because if not, I will go into a 30-minute diatribe about comparing and contrasting Spencer.
Mystery authors.
Exactly. So that means that you've got 3 novels coming out under your own imprint.
Under my own name. And I will point out, you said you have a publisher, not an author. I am an author first. Publisher and the editor part always came second. Something I need sometimes remember when I get so deep into the work side of things that I need to get my words out. But I'm very pleased with this world, and I've got a 4th book to follow. One of the questions, one of the options for the 4th release is, can I get the 4th novel in that series done in time to make it happen? I think I can, but I don't want to put anything on the page. I don't want to make commitments that aren't going to happen. I know I will have a 4th book, and it could be a collection of Edward short stories, because I've done a number of those over the years, including the one I got to do with Larry Correia and Chris Kennedy and Laurel Hamilton and Casey Estelle and a host of other great names in No Game Tonight, the Bane release from a year ago.
Right.
So
you were surrounded with great company in that particular anthology of books, or anthology. So I want us to take a minute and talk about one of the authors that you've picked up with New Mythology since last time we talked, Chris Nuttall. I've been a fan of his for years, and his new series, which just released a book. It's going to release the 11th of July. It's the 3rd book in the Heirs of Cataclysm. He is a tremendous author. I was really happy and excited to see you pick him up.
Well, I'm excited too. This completes the trilogy, and I really hope that he is wanting to publish some more. So I hope I have served him well, and I hope he appreciates. He wants me to continue to work with him. So because again, he's a delight to work with. He started a new method that seemed to work well from my end. Dictated this one to Dragon, and that may work very well nicely for him to speed up his production. Not that it needs to speed up.
He's very prolific.
And well, yeah. And he had some concerns that it wouldn't go smoothly, but from my end, I thought it went really well. So hopefully we'll get more from him. He's a fantastic writer, and a real honor to be part of the Heirs of Cataclysm series. I sort of suspect my only real contribution was coming up with the name Heirs of Cataclysm. That's about it.
The covers on that series are really striking. I thought those were some of the best covers that New Mythology's had, with the ones for Chris's 3 books.
Yeah, those were done by Laercio Messias, who's an artist that we'll keep working with. We really like this stuff. I've got another series, don't really want to talk about it just yet, but I got a big one coming up starting in the fall sometime that will have a number of neat private eye kind of elements, same kind of noir sort of feel. And that's coming. That I don't want to talk too much about, but I'm excited. It's going to be pretty special. I have a suspicion that that'll be right up Laercio's alley. So we'll see what we've got there. If not, I'm sure we'll find other opportunities. He's been great to work with and a fun artist. So, in general, I have to say one of the best parts about this job is how many awesome people have contributed. I mean, I have had great artists like Laercio and J. Caleb Design and Alejandro Rito, who does the Belizean Accord. They've provided fantastic stuff, plus some other authors along the way. And then Tiffany Reynolds and Maya Cleve and Zach Britt and Beth Agaju. One heck of an editing team Chris has brought around. In general, Chris is really good creating a team, and these are just part of it. So I'm blessed to have some people who are there to make things better, that you guys don't often see, the readers don't often see, but a lot of the reason they don't see it is because they've caught a bunch of errors. One of the things I routinely say about editing is that it is often not the quality of the editor's eye, sometimes the number of them. Well, that is true. The fact is we've also got excellent editors, and it's an honor to work with.
Yeah, I've often thought that editors were like the referees and umpires in professional sports.
Exactly.
You never want to notice them, but they are absolutely the most important part of the game.
Yeah, they're a huge part. And again, if you're right, if you don't see a bunch of errors, thank the editor and thank all the work that they put in. And so we're lucky to have that crew.
So, you've had a year, or a little over a year since last time we talked to settle in. You had just taken the responsibility for New Mythology when we spoke last. Looking toward the future within the bounds of what you're allowed to say, can you tell us, like, do you have a number in your head of how many books you want to get out in a year, and what things can you talk about as far as what you see happening in the immediate future for New Mythology?
Sure. My goal, honestly, has always sort of been to have 2 books a month come out from New Mythology. That seems to fit my normal rotation of things. Like this month, we have the 11th with Chris Nuttall, and then we have the 25th with A Lake Most Deep. And we'll only have one release in August. That'll be Where Now the Writer. But as I get everything ramped back up, there's been some, with the move and all the challenges of late, kind of iffy. But ultimately, I'd like to get 2 books out a month. Now, one of the things that's coming that I can tell you, besides Firehall Saga, is Milesian Accords is expanding.
Hallelujah.
Yep. John has done great work with Milesian Accords. If you haven't read it yet, start with A Reluctant Druid. There are now 5 books and 5 novels in that series, plus he's got a bunch of short stories in the anthologies. And he's done amazing work. It's a really neat concept. The magic world and the modern world are coming back together after 1,500 years, and the two can break each other. The modern world can easily break the magical world, and vice versa. So it turns out that farmer is tasked with making sure the two don't break each other, and that's basically the overall concept of the world. But one of the nice things about it as a writer for John is that the way he structured it is all of the myths of human history are available for him to play with, because they were all there, except the agreement said that they had to go with the magical world and not the modern world. And so, for example, John has Celtic and Norse and Native American and a number of other hints here and there in his writing, because these are all things that he's interested in. But there are a boatload of other mythologies that are fun and fascinating. And he has brought in another writer, a very talented young writer who is going to be a name you'll know quite a bit. And that is H.Y. Gregor.
Oh, great.
She is really talented, and I think is going to be an awesome addition to that universe. The outline that she gave us was really neat, and I won't step on her toes by talking about the mythological elements that she chose. I will say this, however, it's not one that gets used too often, and though I have used some of these elements myself, but it is some of my favorite elements out there that really oftentimes get skipped over. And I think you're going to really like what this series does. So, and it's going to be a trilogy. That one's going to be a trilogy. That when we release it, we will release the 3 of them back to back. You can also expect from John somewhere around the end of the year. We don't have a firm date yet because John's been finalizing the game. But once the RPG game for the Four Horsemen is done, he's going to really devote time to making sure that the Milesian Accord gets even more books than he has in the past. And he's been consistent about getting me 1 book. But I think you can expect another novel from him somewhere around the end of the year. Couple of short stories, one from each of Haley and John for the Paladins of Valor, next Valor anthology. And then we'll see when we can schedule in the next 4, which will come really quickly on top of each other. So it's 5 books now, but probably somewhere around the end of 24, it's going to be 10 and growing. And there may be other authors who John tasks, let's play in his sandbox. It's a fun sandbox. A lot of space to do a lot of things.
And I want to put my 2 cents worth in on this. If you're a fan of either Jim Butcher or Steve Hughes, you will absolutely love the Milesian Accords. They are fun, a lot of humor. The stories are well crafted and hang together. The characters are characters that once you meet them, you want to know more about them. So I cannot encourage our listeners enough to purchase the entire series of the Milesian Accords, because they are some of the best fantasy that CKP has ever put out.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm confident enough that I don't really care if you go out and you buy all 5 of them at once.
If you buy one, you're going to get the other 4.
You're going to buy the rest.
Yes.
You're going to buy the rest. It's really good stuff.
I concur. I see that you're going to have another Balance of Kerr book from Kevin Steverson coming sometime in the future.
Yeah. Both Kevin and Bill Webb are writing Swords and Sorcery and have series that have sort of their lives have been so busy of late that they kind of let those fallow, and that's something that all of us are kind of not happy about. I mean, they know they need to finish their trilogy. They want to finish their trilogies, but the CKPI, in the case of Kevin, has been such a huge strain on his resources, and he moved as well. And then Bill Webb has had Hit World and a number of other things he's been juggling. So he is also involved in CKPI. So they're working their tails off. But they assured me at LibertyCon that both of them are that it's finally come to those are being priorities. So I suspect we'll get both of those fairly quickly. Probably sometime towards the end of the year would be my guess. One interesting thing, and one of the reasons why I'm talking about the 2 of them, both of them wrote old school Swords and Sorcery, Conan style crunchy fiction. Like this is pulpy, and it is all the things that we like about that sort of thing. Because their magic systems are so close, and because the style is so close, there's going to be some crossover stuff there that we're all excited. And maybe I shouldn't mention all that now, but we've talked about it at con to other people for a while, so I may spill the beans here. But they've got some great plans in that once they get sort of back into the groove in that series. There's a lot to come there. Even if it's been left fallow for a while, that field's going to get plowed. There's a lot there.
Well, since you brought it up, do you want to take a minute and talk a little bit about LibertyCon? Was it successful this year, and did you have a good time?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me go back to one set of books real quickly before I continue to that. And I will tell you, I did talk to Scott Huggins at LibertyCon. Scott Huggins wrote Responsibility of the Crown and then Responsibility of the Throne. And the end of that trilogy, he is in the middle of working on, and we again hope that somewhere around the end of the year, beginning of next year, we want to finish that trilogy. We've had a number of trilogies that we've been working on that haven't come out as fast as everybody wants to come out fast. Well, I want it to come out fast. Readers want it to come out fast. The authors want it to come out fast. But life sometimes gets in the way. And I don't know if you know, but Scott is a teacher, and dude sometimes puts his job ahead of writing. I don't know why, but what the heck, right?
What a cad.
Strange thing. Yeah, what a cad. No, he's a great teacher as well as a great writer. It's an honor to do his stuff as well. But the third of those is coming out. He's working on that, and that will conclude that trilogy. Tricia J. Wooldred just released Shadow, Ash, and Prophecy. Now, this is book 227 Kingdoms series, and the reason that it got delayed is because she was writing book 2, and it turned out to be books 2 and 4. It became so big that she had to split those out, and because of the way the pacing, it's going to be, she's basically got book 4 written, and book 3 is in progress, and significant work is done. So my guess is we'll have book 3 somewhere in the fall, and it's can't remember the title. Hunter Healer Earth, I think he does.
Yeah, Hunter Healer Earth. That's one of the most interesting statements I have ever had on the podcast. The author was writing, the book got too big, and it became book 2 and 4, and she's in the middle of writing book 3. That sounds so counterintuitive.
Well, she has a neat structure plan for this, because she's got a thread that kind of broke into 2 threads, but that are important, that are still tied together. But you've got to do the initial thread, go back to the initial thread for book 3, and then book 4 is basically written, and then book 5, which brings it all together. It was supposed to be a 3-book trilogy, but this is what happens in the world of Chris Kennedy Publishing and New Mythology Press. We have authors who have great ideas. So we're looking to get the 5th one of those. I don't have a great idea when that would come out, the 5th one. But ideally, you would be awesome to have all 5 of them out by the 24. It may not happen, but, as quickly as she can get them to me, I'll get them out. Tricia is a hell of a writer, a little bit different than a lot of our other writers. Her writing has got tension, but it's a different kind of tension. A lot of times I put tension when it's based on the whole Raymond Chandler philosophy that if you don't know what comes next, have a man with a gun walk into the room. Or in medieval fantasy, it's a man with a sword, and that's my routine thing. Then if I don't know what's next, add a fight scene, and then figure out why the fight scene works.
I was just going to say, if you need a character for somebody to hate, throw in a bard.
Yeah. Careful, in the SCA, I'm known as a bard.
Oh, so sorry.
It probably didn't help my case any there. Anyway, Tricia is a lot smarter than I am. She's got some really neat ways to create tension without necessarily having the obvious guy jumps out with a sword thing, although she does have plenty of action stories. It's just she builds it up with a lot more tension and a lot more Hitchcock pose than mine, which tends to go straight to the Robert B. Parker, Hawk and Spencer get into a fight thing. So that's all coming, and I do have some other writers coming. Again, I don't want to talk about it until we're ready to spill the beans on that. The one last thing is Bonds of Valor came out in March. I didn't talk about the anthology very much because I've been moving, but I'm really pleased with the response. We were really lucky to have such a good crew of authors involved in that. Todd McCaffrey, new to the universe, new to CKP and New Mythology. Now, obviously, that's Anne McCaffrey's son. Jody Lynn Nye contributed a story. Obviously, we've been blessed to have Glenn Cook stories. We continue to get more Glenn Cook stories going forward. These are from the Black Company, which is one of my favorite series in all of fantasy. At LibertyCon, transaction back to your question, talked about not only Bonds of Valor, but also Paladins of Valor. And there is a really good list. I can't really say all of it, but there's a really good list of authors involved, including some names we've not yet brought into the fold as to having contributed. My goal is to get a lot of. I want, ideally, it would be neat that these Valor anthologies, that every big name author in all of fantasy goes, yeah, I tossed one in, had a great time. You should really check him out. We really like what he's doing. And so I'm trying to get as many authors of every level to contribute. So, by the way, if you listen to this and you're thinking about writing a story, go to the chriskennedypublishing.com/blog page. Look for the head energy calls down on the right-hand side of the column, and check out the open call for next year's anthology. The theme, as I hinted at, is paladins and knights and chivalry and the oaths they swear, and them doing valorous deeds. So we want as many submissions to the open calls. And to be honest, one of the interesting things I've noticed about open calls is that we've had great writers giving us great stories, big name writers giving us great stories in worlds that you already know. But oftentimes, because of the fact I get to pick from 40, 50, whatever it is, submission, the open call stories are often some of the best I've ever published. James Chandler's story in Songs of Valor is just stupendously good. And there are many others that come from the open call. So one of the blessings of the open call is that we get some really top flight stuff from people you've never heard of. and may never hear from again. But they've got this one awesome contribution that I'm honored to publish.
And the flip side of that is I'm not as familiar with new mythology as I am with the science fiction side of CKP. But if it is very much like CKP, that's where some of your novelists come from, are people that we've never heard of before that submitted a great short story and people wanted to know more about it.
And to be honest, I'm one of them. I had written a couple. No, seriously, I had written a few novels, but I'd never really written a short story before I got an opportunity. Before Chris said I could submit for a few credits more, and I wrote the story Where Enemies Sit with the Foresters, sort of introducing that unit, and people liked it, and Chris said, write me another, and I wrote him another, and I said, can I write a novel with him? And he said, sure, give me a novel. And that's where The Feeding of Sorrows came out, and that's where Ravening of Wolves, direct sequel to that. And one of the projects that I have on my list that is not the next novel I'm going to write, but maybe the novel after that, or I'll put it in tandem with another Firehall Sagas novel, is The Feasting of Vengeance, which is the third of my Foresters novels, which will tie a lot of that together.
You just answered my next question.
So, and I got to talk about that at LibertyCon as well. Although, I managed to talk about it before Casey Azell took my spot, which is part of the funniest part of LibertyCon. So, shall I go into LibertyCon now? Now that I've gone way apart with you.
Absolutely.
LibertyCon is family. It's the best con for going to and just being a part of it. Brandy and her crew are fantastic. And a lot of the reason they're fantastic, and her dad before her.
That is, it is the, in my opinion, it is the ultimate science fiction convention for people who are real science fiction fans.
I can't argue that. And one of the reasons for that is because Uncle Timmy and Brandy have worked so hard to create a family that run it have been running it for decades. Like, they have so much combined experience. Rich Grawler doing the program, Von Gantz doing the con suite, Matthew Fanny running registration, Ann Robards running the art, Misty Gutierrez Waller running the gaming, and just all the other staff that go around doing the thing. Those are just the ones that pop off the top of my head. They've been doing it forever, and one of their guests of honor this year was Regina Kirby, who has done a ton with them and also with DragonCon. She's just amazing and brilliant. So they have a really great crew. And you walk in, I missed it last year. I made the right choice. I mean, I chose to get married instead of go to a con. I suppose that's fair, but I missed it. So I was so ready to go. I couldn't sleep on a week ago Tuesday when I was about to get in the car the following morning. I ended up getting on the road at 5 a.m. I just couldn't sleep. Said, screw it, and when I got there on Thursday, the lobby was just filled with all my family, right? Like, there were hundreds of people there, and it's my, Thursday night, one of my favorite nights of the year, the hangout night at LibertyCon on Thursday. I was just a feral cat. I mean, I was just bouncing around left and right, and I said hi to so many people, and I had half conversations with a bunch of people, and there's somebody else I haven't seen in a while. There's somebody else I haven't seen in a while. And somebody else. It was brilliant. So, that's the TLDR version of LibertyCon. I was home, and it was nice.
Yeah. If I can only go to one convention a year, if there's any way I can go, it's LibertyCon, and I will concur with everything you said. And I think the two things that make it so special, one you commented on, is the continuity between the years and the core group that put it on. Brandy grew up doing that con. So, it's in her blood. It's in her bone. And the other is they had so much foresight when they set the con up to limit it to X number of tickets so that it didn't grow to the point where all of the relationships went away.
Yeah, a funny story on that. Obviously, it's hard to get tickets because they sell out so quickly. A few years ago, I was actually visiting Mark and Joey Wandry. It happened to be release day for the ticket, and this was the first year that the feeding frenzy happened. And I remember, all right, it's time. I'll get my ticket. I was cooking ahead of time. I was part of the feeding frenzy. I got my ticket, and great. And then I watched the number count, and they sold out in like 12 minutes, all 750 tickets that year. And according to what I've heard from Brandy and some of the others, Fritz Fodovich, there's a name I should have mentioned. He's done a bunch of work there too. They were like, wow, this is going great. And then all of a sudden there was this moment where they realized, oh crap, we need to get all of our volunteers to register so they can go. The tickets are going too fast. And that's a great microcosm of how awesome that con is. People want to go because they've made it a place that people want to go.
Yeah. I will never, one of my most treasured memories is sitting at a table with David Weber and Tim, Brandy's dad, Tim, and I can't remember who the third person was, and we sat there for an hour and a half talking and playing spades.
That spade's such an iconic thing for that convention.
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah, they used to do kind of a championship tournament at LibertyCon for just spades, and that was what got me to go my first time.
They did that again. That is still there. This year, because they were combined with Deep South Con, I believe they added a hearts tournament as well. I think that's a Deep South Con thing. I'm not entirely sure because I'm not terribly familiar with how Deep South Con works, because this was my first Deep South Con. Though, of course, I was there mostly because it was LibertyCon. I've been wanting to go to Deep South Con and what did the things that I did there were really productive in general. I thought I got a chance to hang out with some of my friends and talk about new story ideas, and a number of the things that I can't talk about yet. We touched base on and made plans for, but like I say, it's not quite time to release all that information yet. Talked to Trish about her next book, Todd about his next book, talked to Bill and Kevin about their next book, had some added some new authors, like I was talking about for the anthologies, added some authors to the list that have never written for us before, some fairly successful names, and I'm really excited to add them to the list. I got to chat with Larry Correa, for example, very briefly, because he's always so busy, but every time you're around Larry, he drops a nugget or two of just like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And then got a chance to talk to Tim Zahn. My previous interaction with Tim Zahn was actually at a Planet Comic-Con here in Kansas City when I was living in Kansas City. And I have a first edition black collar that is ratty and torn up and has a used bookstore sticker on it, and was and it's his first book, I believe. And I fell in love with him at that point. It's such a great story. And I turned out my booth was right across his at Planet Comic-Con. And he was signing books for everybody and all these new books, shiny books in great shape. And during a lull, I was like, haven't seen one of these in a while. And again, there's a tear on the cover, right, and it's totally not a collectible.
It's well loved.
I haven't seen one of those in ages. That's brilliant. And I was like, I thought you might enjoy it. And I turned to walk away. He's like, no. I'm totally signing that one. And I'm like, it's kind of in bad shape here. He's like, no, that's the best one. You've read it a bunch of times. Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have. And
he's a quality guy.
He is. He's a very quality guy. So I talked to him. He probably will never have a chance to contribute to the Bonds of Earth, the Valor anthologies, but I asked. He's always so busy though that it's hard, and it's hard for a lot of the big name authors. Why I want to get as many of them involved as possible, because if I have a list of 30 of them or so that you guys all really want to hear and read, well, I might get one or two from that list, or 5, whatever. But it's hard because they've all got responsibilities and opportunities that are significantly more direct along their path. So,
and they're usually committed 2 or 3 years out.
Yep. And And I've easily said, so I realize you probably can't contribute to something by the end of this year, but how about by the end of next year? And that has worked a time or two. So there we go. It's an honor to work with these big names, but it's also, they're just tough to get a hold of because they're doing stuff, which is what we all us often.
Well, as we wind down this episode of the podcast, can you speak to our listeners about how they find out more information about New Mythology, how they can interact with you with social media, anything that you want to tell them as far as, following you and your author career as opposed to your editor career? Give us a little synopsis of how we stay in touch with Rob Howell.
Well, a variety of things. First of all, I do a mailing list every week. You can either follow the mailing list on my blog, set up an RSS feed, and that is robhowell.org/blog, or sign up at firehallsagas.com. You can get you can go directly into the mailing list there. And each week I talk about, what's coming also with my stuff and also New Mythology and what's going on in my life. I usually have a fun quote I think is interesting and then talk about the music or whatever it is I'm listening to at the time. I also put out, notes for what's coming with New Mythology, such as you can always find the upcoming anthology link, for the details for the upcoming anthology open call on my mailing list. So it's the best way to get a bunch of stuff. I try to make it worth your time to read with fun stuff in it as well. Next, I would say that I'm on Facebook. Track me down there. I'm also Rotary2112 on Twitter. I'm there quite often. And then Discord. There's a New Mythology Press Discord channel. And we encourage anybody who wants to talk about fantasy writing, fantasy literature, to come on out. It's not just the fantasy literature we put out at New Mythology Press. It's any kind of fantasy literature, fantasy films, whatever. If you want to talk about the Tolkien, or you want to talk about Jim Butcher, or if you want to talk about the new D&D movie that came out, whatever you want to talk about, it's there for fans of the fantasy genre. We'll also post there our new books and everything like that. So that's another way you can keep track of our new books, our anthology calls, and also we also do on there. Charlie Cox, one of our regulars, routinely posts questions. Done a great job making sure we have opportunities to talk about writing, philosophy and skills and help us get better writers. We talk about that. So more people who want to join in and talk about their writing thoughts, the better. Call it a mini con, kind of what I'm trying to make it. And she's done a great job helping with that. Let's see here. The other thing I do that I really enjoy, and if you want to make sure I routinely get money, I want you to subscribe to this. I do a Patreon. The Patreon is every couple of weeks or twice a month, I write an Old English style riddle, and these are challenging riddles hidden in the Old English poetry that have a lot of subtle kenning, the term that they use in Old English poetry. So it's written in that same alliterative style, and I'll have a lot of fun creating those riddles, and every once in a while somebody gets it. So it's neat. It's neat when somebody actually parses through everything and gets it. With that, every week I don't post riddle, you get a snippet from either one of my work or one of the projects in hand from New Mythology. For example, we've had several. Last Monday, I posted a chunk from Shadow, Ash, and Prophecy. If any of you went to the Driblets of Bane website on the server,
Jiltanith, yeah.
Yep, that website is the inspiration for a lot of this, because I tell you, the Jiltanith site, I would routinely go, okay, when's the next David Weber book, and I would read like the first 5 chapters. And not that I wasn't going to be hooked already. I was already going to buy it, but it was neat to find out what was the next honor book or the next David Drake, Lieutenant Weary story or whatever. And so it's a lot of that, and the snippets are free to any subscriber. So you can subscribe for as low as $6 a month. It's 2 riddles, $3 a riddle. The $5 one, I must say, is probably what I think is the best deal. It's $5 a riddle, so $10 a month, but you get every quarter you get a free ebook. So any CKP ebook you want, I will buy you a copy and I'll send it if you are one of my subscribers. So there you go. And there's some other things as well. There's more than a few other ones, including one that I'll send you a hard copy if you are every quarter, if you are on that tier. So I do that a lot. If you want to get sneak peeks at the CKP snippets of CKP upcoming works or my works, and get challenged every couple of weeks with something that they're not easy. I don't make them easy, but I do have a lot of fun with them. So that's my Patreon, and that is patreon.com/Rhodri2112. Frankly, if you search Rhodri2112, that's me, RHODRI 2112. Wherever you find that, it's me. As far as I know, I'm the only one who chose that name for my social media. There you go.
Rob, you don't know how much I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. I want to take a moment to congratulate you on your wedding since last time we talked, your grandchild since last time we talked, and the fact that you have found a home that you're very happy with and that you have the opportunity to turn into a multifaceted building that is made just for you and your wife. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Randall. And frankly, thanks again for all the work you do for Chris Kennedy Publishing. You guys may not realize it, but he does a bunch of work behind the scenes, too, that oftentimes doesn't get talked about. Not just his podcast. There's more he does for Chris and I along the way. So he is a big part of what makes Chris Kennedy Publishing and New Mythology Press.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to doing this again next year and watching New Mythology grow bigger and better every year. Thank you.
You've been listening to the CKP Future Books Podcast with host Randall Willis. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving it a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you subscribe. Show likes and channel subscriptions are also much appreciated on the CKP YouTube channel. Finally, if you'd like to know more about this author or others on the CKP roster, visit chriskennedypublishing.com. Thanks for listening to the CKP Future Books Podcast. We'll see you next time.